atonement of sin and the continuance of life by and through the Levitical high priest. This period is the period of our Parshad, where it was the blood of animals and not grace that allowed for the forgiveness of transgression. We say that the period of waiting had begun. Now you were going to have to wait for restoration to take place. You didn't want to have a relationship with me free of all this mess. You didn't want to have a relationship because you wanted to have a relationship with me, because you had faith in me and you were obedient to what I had to tell you. Now you will be obedient to what my word says, or you will die. And this is a type of bondage. This is a type of captivity. So our next scenario takes place in an upper room in Jerusalem and then concludes outside the city at a place called Golgotha. So we consider Mark 14:22 through 23 first, and then we'll take a look at John 19:31. And in Mark it says, "And they were eating, or as they were eating, Joshua took bread, having blessed it, gave it to them, and said, 'Take this and eat. This is my body.' And taking the cup, giving thanks, he said to them, he gave it to them, and they all drank from it. And he said to them, 'This is my blood, that of a renewed covenant, which is shed for many.'" What do we see similar here to what happened with Abram and Melchizedek? They broke bread and wine together. Okay? The question is, which covenant was being renewed? The Levitical or Sinai covenant? Was that the one that was being renewed? Because if it was being renewed, it had never been broken, so that was a mess. Or was it the covenant between Abram and Yahweh with Melchizedek as the high priest that was being renewed? Abram and Melchizedek broke bread and wine together, where the Levitical sacrifices were put on an altar and burned. The bread, the grain offering, was burned. The libation, the wine, was poured out. So it wasn't eaten. Joshua, the bread of life, said that his blood would be shed for many. So consider these last words spoken by Joshua at Golgotha. So when Joshua took the sour wine, he said, "It is finished." And bowing his head, he gave up his spirit. What was finished? Was it his ministry that ended? Or what was finished? That all the pain and suffering that he went through, was that finished? Wine only sours when it's left too long without drinking. The time of waiting was over. Humankind could not restore, redeem, or deliver themselves from death without the undeserved favor of Yahweh. Remember we said earlier that he was going to give humankind the opportunity to simply be obedient out of faith without grace being necessary. Do it because you want to. But they couldn't do that because they couldn't even listen to him, because they were too distracted with everything else. This had now been provided through Joshua, the vehicle of sacrifice at the Tav that did away with the need for the blood of animals. The Levitical priesthood and this period of our Parshad, captivity and being bound, was over for those who would and do believe and receive the bread and the wine given to Yahweh, or given by Yahweh. To them is restored the covenant held between Abram and Yahweh Elohim by and through the priesthood of Melchizedek. To accept the bread and the wine when we have communion is to say, yes, I will walk in faith and I will be obedient because I want to. I want to have a relationship. Okay? This is the priesthood of Melchizedek. This is a covenant in which we hold up our right hand and declare, I have lifted up my hand unto Yahweh, El Elyon, master of heaven and earth. We can now approach our Elohim without the veil and speak to him directly as Adam, Noah, Abram, and Moses once did, by and through our high priest, Yahshua, who, as Paul says to the Hebrews, was in the manner of Melchizedek. He was like Melchizedek. I didn't say he was Melchizedek. He was like Melchizedek. In the renewed covenant in the priesthood of Melchizedek, in this we are able to complete our verse with, and begot sons and daughters. Begot means to bring forth, and the root of ben, which is son, and bat, which is daughter, is bana. That means to restore, renew, and to establish. We can now move forward in our relationship with Yahweh, our Elohim, and enjoy breaking bread and partaking of his new wine in a covenant under the restored priesthood in the name of righteousness. Okay? So it's a short lesson. We came to this out of simply the numbers in a genealogy, what the words meant in a genealogy. And they're talking about a period of time that still comes to today. If you do not believe and receive and accept Yahshua, then you are still living under the Levitical priesthood. The law of sin and death still applies to you. Whether you are a Christian, a Jew, Muslim, Buddhist, it doesn't make a difference. We say, well, it's for the people of Israel. But we have to understand that Israel means two things. It means to fight against Elohim, or that Elohim prevails. If I'm fighting against Elohim, then I'm going to be held accountable under the law of sin and death. If Elohim prevails in my life, and I have accepted and I believe and received Yahshua, then I'm back into the priesthood of Melchizedek, and that now I do it because I love my Elohim with all of my heart, with all of my soul. Yahshua added a word that's not found in Devarim. He said, with all your mind, with all your strength. We're going to talk about this mind thing here in just a second. Just real quick, we're going to read, y'all have this the 110th Psalm, which also talks about the priesthood of Melchizedek. And it says, a Psalm of David. Yahweh says unto my master, sit you at my right hand until I make your enemies your footstool. The rod of your strength Yahweh will send out of Zion. Rule you in the midst of your enemies. Your people offer themselves willingly in the day of your warfare. In distinct adornments from the womb of dawn, yours is the dew of your youth. Yahweh has sworn and will not repent. You are a priest forever, after the manner of Melchizedek. You're not Melchizedek. You resemble Melchizedek. You do the same things that Melchizedek did. The master at your right hand does crush kings in the day of his wrath. He will judge among the nations. He fills it with dead bodies. He crushes the head over a wide land. He will drink of the brook in the way. Therefore will he lift up the head. Okay? Now, this is just showing us that Yahshua would be a priest in the manner of Melchizedek. And this is what Paul goes on to say in Hebrews. And we hold that Paul wrote Hebrews because the writing style is similar to Paul. But in Hebrews he said, in the order of Melchizedek. he was a high priest of the order of Melchizedek. But mind, Yeshua said mind. And what we just read is you will crush the head, basically, of the unbeliever. We go to Ezekiel, which has a very, very interesting little piece within it that I opened it up and I said, wow, I didn't realize that until I started looking at the Hebrew side of it. It says, then he called, and this is Ezekiel chapter 9, verses 1 through something, verses 1 through 11. Then he called in my ears with a loud voice, saying, this is Ezekiel talking, cause them that have charge over the city to draw near, every man with his destroying weapon in his hand. And behold, 6 men came from the way of the upper gate, which lies towards the north, every man with his weapon of destruction in his hand. And one man in the midst of them, clothed in linen, with the writer's inkhorn on his side, and they went in and stood beside the brazen altar. Who is this person dressed in linen with an inkhorn and a pen? This is a representation of the word. Okay? And the glory of the Elohei of Israel was gone up from the cherub whereupon it was, to the threshold of the house, and he called to the man clothed in linen, who had the writer's inkhorn on his side. And this is where it starts to get interesting. And Yahweh said unto him, go through the midst of the city, through the midst of Jerusalem, and set a mark upon the foreheads of the men that sigh and that cry for all the abominations that are done in the midst thereof. Put a mark on the ones who recognize iniquity. Put a mark on the ones who are crying out to me for restoration. The interesting thing about this, and I marked it in yellow, anybody recognize what this word is? Tav. The word used for mark is tav. This is put a tav on their forehead. What must we have in our mind? What must we believe and receive? Who must we understand in order to receive restoration, redemption, and deliverance? Who was the Tav? Yeshua. Yeshua. And to the others he said in my hearing, go you through the city after him and smite. Basically, strike. Let not your eyes spare, neither have you pity. Slay utterly the old man, the young man, the maiden, and the little children and the women. But come not near any man upon whom is the Tav, and begin in my sanctuary. Then they began at the elders that were before the house. And he said unto them, defile the house and fill the courts with the slain. Go you forth. And they went forth and smote the city. And it came to pass while they were smiting, and I was left, that I fell upon my face and cried and said, Master Yahweh, will you destroy all the residue of Israel in your pouring out of your fury upon Jerusalem? And he said unto me, the iniquity of the house of Israel and Judah is exceedingly great, and the land is full of blood, and the city full of wrestling of judgment. For they say, Yahweh has forsaken the land, Yahweh does not see. What are they lacking? They're lacking faith. What are the requirements of the priesthood of Melchizedek? Faith. And as for me also, my eyes shall not spare, neither will I have pity, but I will bring their way upon their head. I will bring their way upon their head. Whose responsibility is it? It says, I will bring their way upon their head. Their iniquity is on their own head. And behold, the man clothed in linen, who had the inkhorn on his side, reported, saying, I have done according to all you have commanded me. What did Joshua say? It is finished. So what do we have in our mind? What do we have in our soul, our very being? Is that we believe and receive the restoration, redemption, and deliverance that came from Yahweh, who is Yahshua. We receive Mashiach, the anointing of Yahweh that surrounds us and infills us, that allows us to hear the Ruach. And when we hear the Ruach, what do we have through Yeshua Mashiach? We have the relationship that was lost, the relationship that Adam and Elohim had, the relationship that Noah had with Elohim, the relationship that before Noah Enoch had with Elohim, the relationship that Abram had with Elohim, the relationship that ultimately Moses had with Elohim. For a lot of these people in Scripture, we find that they walked with Elohim. They had that kind of relationship. So, in this little irrelevant verse, we pick up a whole lot more than simply the fact that Shem lived after he begot a Parshad 500 years and begot sons and daughters. And that is our little study on this segment. Any questions?
We're getting to Genesis slowly but surely.
Yeah, we might make it eventually.
However you say it.
Provenness is achieved.
How do you say Genesis?